What's happening, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast's UFC 264 post-fight reaction video. Of course, after every one of the big fights, I love to hop on my podcast, give my post-fight reaction thoughts to everything that went down last night, Saturday night, last night being Saturday, today being Sunday, at UFC 264, Poirier versus McGregor 3. What a night it was, folks. First, before I go into the action that took place last night, I have to remind you guys that this show is sponsored by Labatt Blue Brewing Company as well. Each and every fight that takes place, I want to hear from every mixed martial arts fan out there. I want to hear from everybody on their thoughts on the fights. What did they think as far as what went down last night? Fire those comments away in the comment section below of this video. I will get to those comments as the video progresses. So throw those takes at me. I really appreciate the support. Whether you're following me on Facebook or Instagram, obviously I'm big on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take, big on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. 2,000 followers plus. Really appreciate all the love and support on all of those social media platforms. The YouTube channel needs all the love and support that it can get. Of course, subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Western New York. Cloudy, but hey, when it's cloudy, there's a solid chance that I am doing a podcast, especially when the weather, is not that great. So, let's go into this fight. The fact that Poirier McGregor 3 took place last night, my post-fight reaction, as I like to call it. I was really excited for this fight, as was everyone. We all thought that heading into this one, this would be one of the bigger, trilogy. This was, I think that to date, this was the biggest trilogy fight, the third, rubber match, if you will, in the history of the sport. Between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. It went back, 7 years, this rivalry. 2014, they first fought. 2021, January of 2021, this year, they fight for the second time. And Poirier hands Conor his first technical knockout loss. We knew that this fight would happen straight away. What Conor wants, Conor gets, because he is the draw. And we knew that Poirier wanted the third fight to happen as well. It's a massive opportunity for Poirier to have 2 victories in a row against McGregor, and it's an opportunity for Poirier, let's just face it, to make more money than he's ever made in a single fight. So that's why this fight took place. For all the fight fans at home that wondered why this fight happened as soon as it did in the immediate aftermath of the second one, that's why. Okay, that's why. Shoving those questions out the door, answering those questions right here is what I had to do just to start off. Dustin Poirier made more money in this fight than he would have made in a title fight. That's a fact. That's not opinion. That is simple fact. So throwing that out there as well. The fight fans deserved this fight live, in front of a live audience. The second fight was not in front of a live audience. We got this one in front of a live audience at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It was a star-studded event. You had, Mel Gibson was in the house. 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, was in the house. Machine Gun Kelly, Megan Fox, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Wide-ranging guests, wide-ranging audience celebrities. Baker Mayfield, OBJ, Chuck Liddell, obviously, in attendance for that big UFC last night, UFC 264. But man, this card as a whole did not live up to its billing. This card was not what I foresaw it to be. On paper, I thought, man, Poirier McGregor is going to be a great fight. Wonder Boy versus Burns would be a great fight. I was very wrong about that. That was a terrible fight. And it largely played a factor of, you got 2 guys in the octagon. You got 3 guys in the octagon. We always forget who that third guy is, that third guy being the referee. And to touch on Gilbert Burns before I dive into McGregor and Poirier, Burns wasn't really doing a whole lot in that fight. And yet the ref just continued to let that fight go down the path that it did. And it drove me nuts watching it. Gilbert Burns not really advancing position. Wonder Boy, the clock just winding down. Maybe it had something to do with the parlay bet that I made on Wonder Boy and Poirier, which I would have won on had the ref in had the ref in Wonder Boy and Burns actually allowed that fight to be stood up when it should have been. Okay, I thought that fight should have been stood up far sooner than it was. And in actuality, it wasn't stood up at all. That was a problem. Start off with the co-main event, I guess. With that, I just had to get that off my chest. So Poirier-McGregor. Poirier wins via TKO due to doctor stoppage at the end of the first round. The fight is waved off. Done. Finished. Finito. What happened? Okay, what exactly happened in that moment that Conor McGregor takes that step back? His ankle completely gives. He scoots his butt back to the cage. Herb Dean, the ref of the fight between Poirier and McGregor, doesn't notice what's going on because he's not in line of vision of Poirier and McGregor. He does not know he doesn't see it. He doesn't see the break. He just sees McGregor take a step back, kind of fall on his butt, scoot back, and allows Poirier to fire off what was probably 5 to 10 unnecessary shots. They weren't damaging shots, but the ref's job is to step in there and to notice when a fighter is hurt, whether it's due to injury or whether it's due to obviously being knocked out or even being choked out or a limb breaking or anything like that. And I thought McGregor's leg was hurt prior to stepping back. I noticed it was a moment where McGregor was facing Poirier. McGregor was actually on the left of the screen. Poirier was on the right of the screen. McGregor threw a very hard leg kick that landed right on the knee of Poirier. Poirier noticed it, pointed at McGregor's leg. The fight continued. The fight continued from there on out, due in large part to the fact that Poirier actually took McGregor down, was able to get McGregor down with ease. But if that fight had continued to stand, that fight would have ended sooner than the end of the first round. It was a fractured ankle at that moment. And then the fracture turned into a broken tibia by the end of that fight. So I'm not a doctor, won't pretend to be, but this has me asking the question, due to the aftermath of this fight, due to the fact that this fight played itself out the way that it did, will Poirier versus McGregor 4 take place? And if so, when? The rivalry is on fire. This rivalry between these two guys has never been hotter as far as the anger and animosity and just vitriol that these guys have for one another is palpable now. So much so that as that fight ended the way that it did, McGregor was spouting off how he spouts off, and Poirier was obliging, reacting, didn't necessarily act as classy as he presents himself to be. Now, I'm not saying that Poirier didn't deserve the right to respond to McGregor that way, because McGregor wasn't really being the classiest guy on earth either, bringing Poirier's wife into the equation, murdering Dustin Poirier into equation. So, Poirier had every right to kind of react the way that he did, and I wasn't necessarily shocked by it. But what I was shocked by is the fact that the UFC even interviewed McGregor in that moment. Yes, the consumer that's buying the pay-per-view wanted to hear from the biggest star that the company has ever had to offer. But in that moment, there's a time and place. And in that moment, I thought, man, they're going to interview this guy. They're actually going to give him a chance to spout off, excuses pretty much prior to the injury. What happened in the fight? So that's the emphasis where I go back to the graphic of what happened in this fight. We talk about the injury because that's what ended the fight. But what was actually taking place prior to the injury happening? A lot of one-sided poundings with Dustin Poirier swinging the hammer, frankly. And I won't say that the round was a 10-8 round like former UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping did. I won't say that because I don't believe it was a 10-8 round. Was it a dominant round by Poirier? 100%. Was it a 10-8 round by Poirier? No, not necessarily. And the fact that Conor came out, you learn a lot of how a fight is going to go when it first begins without even a punch being thrown. You notice the stances and how these guys are moving. I thought, wow, Conor looked bouncy. He looked like the featherweight version of himself. He was very light on his feet, was throwing a lot of kicks. He threw 2 consecutive spinning back kicks that landed on Poirier to begin the fight. I thought, we're in business here. If you're a Conor McGregor fan, you're in business here. McGregor is fighting the way that he fought to win the featherweight title, to win the lightweight title, and become the first simultaneous champ in UFC history. I thought, okay, will that still be enough? We'll have to wait and see. Can Poirier weather that storm? Poirier did weather the storm to the tune of, I'm going to take this fight to the ground, implement my game plan on the ground. I'm not going to stand and trade with this man because this man is not the same man that I fought in the second fight. He's similar to the guy that I lost to in the first fight, and I don't want to go down that road again. We're not going to go down that road again. We're going to go into my world. Not that Poirier is a wrestling tactician by any stretch. He's not Habib, but Poirier has a well-rounded skill set, right? So he takes McGregor to the canvas with relative ease. And that is concerning if you are a Conor McGregor fan, because Conor's heading into this fight saying, we train mixed martial arts and only mixed martial arts. And you knew that, yeah, McGregor's most susceptible to the takedown. If any weaknesses in his game outside of his jiu-jitsu defense and guillotine defense, you could say, would be his inability to defend a takedown. Poirier has had an easier time taking down Conor than Habib did. I don't understand how that is a fact, but it is. There were moments in the Habib fight where Conor was bouncing on one leg. His one leg was like a rubber band, bouncing up and down on it, like a trampoline, practically. With Poirier, though, the fact that he is able to take McGregor down with as much ease as he did in the second fight, as well as this third fight, it's back to the drawing board for Conor if this fourth fight happens. And it goes back to the question that I asked earlier, will this fourth fight take place? You bet your ass that this fourth fight will happen. It's going to happen. There's no doubt about it that this fourth fight will take place. It's just a matter of when, not whether it will or not. Just when. What date will this fight? It's going to happen. Because that's not a definitive way to end a trilogy, first off. Secondly, that's not a win that Dustin Poirier can hang his hat on. Third, Conor McGregor is still the biggest name in the company. He says what he says goes. And big business is a part of business. This is big business. You want as much big business as possible in business, and this is big business. So, buy rates, pay-per-view numbers have not trickled in yet. I've read reports of 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, maybe as high as 2 million pay-per-view buys for last night's event. It's massive, massive numbers that the UFC never touches without Conor McGregor. And I'd like to think that we're at a point in history right now of sport and entertainment where the people need as much entertainment as possible, whether it's forced or whether it's played itself out. We know one thing is for sure. They'll be able to sell a fourth fight to anyone, but we know who the better man is right now as a fighter. We know that Dustin Poirier is better than Conor. The last, 2 rounds that they have fought against one another, Poirier has dominated Conor. Poirier has made Conor look, I don't want to say old, but past the prime of his career. And I hate throwing that term out there because I feel like it's disrespectful to an athlete, especially an athlete that has done what Conor has done in the sport. And people love to hate the guy. And to an extent, I get it. He was like a forced draw that was force-fed down everyone's throat, and not everybody was on board right out of the gate. But two-division champ, simultaneous champ, makes the Floyd Mayweather fight happen. Without Conor McGregor, that fight does not happen at all, period. So, take the good with the bad. Do I think he went a little overboard with the trash talk? 100%. Do I think that they will fight again? 100%. Dustin Poirier is a competitor. Conor is a competitor as well. And this is one of the hottest rivalries that the UFC has ever had, and they've had plenty of rivalries over the course of their history. So let's get to the comment here. Jeff Davis says, let's be honest, is McGregor ever classy? Well, he tried to be in the second fight with Poirier, and it didn't work out too well for him. So, I see your point for sure, and I like the profile picture, by the way, obviously, but Bills fans here. But the fact of the matter is, Conor needed to hype himself up, and that's what he's always done. He's always hyped himself up to put himself in the mind frame of going to war, and I respect it. It brings eyeballs to the sport. It brings attention to his fights, and frankly, without him, the sport would miss him. The sport needed him to win last night. The sport didn't need him to suffer this injury, but it's the fight game. Crazy stuff happens. In fact, the fact of the matter is, he threw that really hard leg kick. Poirier checked it, and he got hurt. It's pretty odd that, he injured his leg in two fights in a row. Was the damage that he sustained to that leg in the second fight, did he go into this fight potentially with damage to that leg? Maybe. Maybe he did. Maybe, just maybe he did. We'll see here. Alex Alberto with the UFC hat. He says, Dustin is not better. Conor was boxing him up. But it's a mixed martial arts fight, Alex Alberto G. It's not a boxing match. And Poirier took it to the mat with relative ease and landed a lot of punches. The big question, and this is what I said actually in the parking lot from the bar that I was watching the fight at, watch it with my buddies. My dad meets me out there too. And, every fight, every round starts on the feet. What would have happened if Conor hadn't gotten hurt? We'll never know. And that's why they have to fight a fourth time. They just have to do it again. This is not settled. I wouldn't even consider that a loss. The fact that it is a loss on Conor's record, I think, is ridiculous. The fact that that's like the rule set in mixed martial arts is just stupid to me. If I am in a fight and I get hurt by throwing a technique, that to me shouldn't be a loss on my end. That should be a no contest, because it wasn't from a blow that McGregor suffered through, not like the second fight. This was a blow that McGregor fired off that hurt him. So it wasn't like Poirier, hurt. And then the people say, well, Poirier checked the kick. Well, it's really tough, because McGregor fires that kick and it's just above the calf, the front of his shin, catches the knee. It's just timing, just bad timing, maybe bad measuring of distance that allows that kick to land on the knee. Great point here made by Luke Fadness. He says, gotta love how Conor says losing to submissions don't count, yet he went for a couple of his own. You're onto something there, Luke. I think the fact that Poirier was caught in that submission, he was not in the danger that everyone thought he was in. First off, that was a one-armed guillotine. The way that Poirier was up of Conor, the way that Poirier was on top of Conor, his legs were straight up in the air against the cage. Could have pushed off the cage. He didn't. He transitioned rolling the other way. But he was never in any real danger there. For a brief second, there was some danger there, of course, when your head's in that position, but for the most part, he was never in real danger. So yeah, and I've watched the fight. I've watched the fight several times since it ended, and there was a kick checked by Poirier. It wasn't checked in the sense that I shouldn't say it was checked. I should say Conor threw a leg kick that landed on Poirier's knee to the point where Poirier pointed at his leg, and then shortly thereafter he fired that takedown. I think he thought, if I get this takedown, McGregor's not going to be able to get back up to his feet because his leg is hurt. They didn't see it. So because his leg is hurt, I'm going to take him down, try to pound on him, hopefully win this fight. If I don't finish him, will he make it through this round, and will he make it through to the next round to compete in the next round? He was hurt. He was hurt. It wasn't as hurt as it was when he took that step back, but he was definitely hurt. It's safe to say, though, that fight was disappointing. You know, I didn't have a real rooting interest in the bout in terms of, you know, McGregor or Poirier. Who do I think will win, or, you know, who do I want to win? I didn't have a guy that I wanted to win. I didn't have a guy that I thought, you know, I preferred over the other, I should say. I thought Poirier would win this fight because I just think better, more well-rounded mixed martial artist right now as things stand. And there was nothing that proved me otherwise in that fight. I mean, there were moments that Conor landed some decent punches. There were moments where Poirier landed some decent punches as well. You know, a lot of people are saying that Conor was outboxed, or that Conor outboxed Poirier. I don't think so. I think Poirier landed his punches to shoot for the takedown, and it's mixed martial arts. It's not boxing. So, you know, if you can't throw that in there as a reason within a fight as to why it ends the way that it does, or ends the way that it did, then you're watching the wrong sport. So, you know, I think that they will fight again. I think Poirier is going to get a shot at Charles Oliveira, and I think he should. He's been in the game a long time, as is Oliveira. He's ready for a challenge as the champion, and who better to challenge him for the title than Poirier, who's coming off of a really solid run. You throw the Conor fights aside, the only fight that really stands out is one that went, you know, really against him in recent years, I should say, was the Khabib fight. And, you know, prior to that, you know, he's beaten guys like Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, Max Holloway to win the interim title, of course. And those are names, you know, those are worthy names. Those are names that, you know, belong in the, you know, history books for sure. So, you know, I think Poirier and Oliveira will be a great fight. I think that this is an opportunity for Poirier, though, to kind of separate himself from McGregor only in the short term. In the long term, these guys will fight again. No doubt about it. Poirier wins the title against Oliveira. Things are going to get very interesting because Conor McGregor could get a title shot coming off of a TKO, you know, broken tibia bone in his leg loss. And a lot of people will take umbrage with that and say that that's not fair. That's not. He is still the biggest draw in the history of the sport. And he's still drawing, even losing 2 fights in a row, even losing 3 out of his last 4. You're going to be watching Poirier versus McGregor 4. If you watch the second one, if you watch the third one, you're watching the fourth one. It's just the fact of the matter. It's just the reality of the situation. So I'm happy for Poirier that, you know, he's going to get this opportunity. I feel he should. I feel he will. Has been confirmed, of course, but I feel like Oliveira and Poirier is next. Conor, what's next for him? A lot of rehabilitation, physical therapy, strengthening those legs, and getting back in there. There is no way that the champ is going to go out like that. It's just not going to happen. Champ will fight again, more likely than not, against Poirier in his comeback fight, and I'm going to be watching it. I don't know about you guys, but very happy to see, segue here, very happy, and I want to make this a point, very happy to see Tuivasa send Greg Hardy into the level of unconsciousness that he was. I hated the fact that the UFC gave Greg Hardy an opportunity Call me a hater for it. I don't care. I thought it was a bad look for the UFC. I thought it was an even worse look for the heavyweight division to have this man fighting Tai Tuivasa, who is a legitimate top 10 heavyweight. I think it was a little bit of a disrespectful act by the UFC to allow Greg Hardy the opportunity to have a UFC career. Ridiculous. I hope that those back-to-back losses are the end of it for him. I was done with the sideshow before it even started, and I'm beyond done with it now. Wonder Boy, what's next for Wonder Boy now that he's coming off of that loss against Gilbert Burns? I feel like 38 years old. It's really tough to make that climb up to a title shot again. Glover Teixeira did it at the age of 41, but not everybody is as durable as Glover Teixeira. I love Wonder Boy. I wanted him to win last night, but I was very disappointed that the fight turned out the way that it did. It was a dud. Gilbert Burns doesn't really raise much of his stock, and it's safe to say that Tai Tuivasa stole the show. That was a comment that was thrown down here on the video live on YouTube and Facebook right now. But folks, feel free to tune into future episodes of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any and all audio platforms. I'm available, okay? As well as visual platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube. I really appreciate the support. And I think that all in all, this was not the best night for fights last night. It wasn't what it was, predicted to be or expected to be, but it was still fun. And I'm a diehard, hardcore mixed martial arts fight fan. There is something different about Conor McGregor's entrance into the octagon, a Conor McGregor fight night. He brings the masses to the sport. It was cool to see all those celebrities in attendance, and it was even better for me to hop on here the next day and recap all the action for you. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in to the UFC 264 post-fight reaction show brought to you by the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Take care and enjoy the next card. We got a little ways before the card that I really want to see. Main event, Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw. I'm elated for that fight, July 24th. That's the next one that's circled on my calendar. I'm going to talk about it in the weeks leading up, days leading up. So stay tuned for all things Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Take care.